What's up, familia? Dayspring here with a very important episode of Power of X-Men, where we are going to discuss Sadie Sink in Spider-Man Brand New Day. Obviously, the internet has already revealed her identity, but if you're just listening to this podcast randomly 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks since the movie came out, then cut out because we're obviously going to discuss who she is. I can't imagine you're going to be listening to this episode and not know that we are going to discuss in 3, 2, 1. Final spoiler warning that Sadie Sink plays Jean Grey. Now, familia, I have very complicated feels on this. I've been sad. I've been excited. I have been quiet on it on the social media front because, one, I didn't want to, I didn't know when to reveal it, right? I didn't know when I was supposed to post about it because I didn't want people to then start messaging me like really angry comments being like, you spoiled something, Dayspring, how dare you? I mean, I got that in the past for X-Men 97 Season 1. I've gotten it for other movies as well, where I was like, okay, the timing here should be good to say it, and nope, it absolutely was not. I've had run-ins with fandom in the past, other fandoms, like the Chris Evans stance, where people get really angry at you and they start hacking your bank account and stuff like that. So I did not want to get into those situations. As of this recording, I have not posted that Sadie Sink is Jean Grey. So I'm kind of glad I didn't because I've needed to marinate on my feelings. First, let's break down some overall thoughts. Now, it was about a year and some change ago. I want to say it was like fall of 2025 that people were talking about Sadie Sink seriously being Jean Grey in No Way Home, in Brand New Day. Now, the idea was that she had gone in to meet with Marvel Studios, and it was Jeff Snyder, if you're not aware of him, familia, he has in the past reported on a lot of MCU scoops. He said that Jean was going to have a much larger role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that he shared that John Rocha on the John Rocha podcast, that one of his oldest and most trusted sources, just 30 minutes of that recording, had told him that Sadie Sink was in line to be Jean Grey. Now, my initial reaction to this was, okay, in Spider-Man, like Sadie Sink being Jean Grey, that's great. However, how could she be in a Sony movie, right? Because for those of you who don't know, Fox was acquired by Marvel Disney. It was a pretty big merger, and let's just call it what it is. One of the main reasons Disney wanted Fox was because it would get the remaining Marvel IPs that it was lacking, i.e., the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Daredevil, right? Elektra, all those characters would now officially be part of the MCU playing card. They paid a lot of money for that. Sony still has Spider-Man. Obviously, there are talks about like how convoluted it is for Hulk, and obviously they resolved it with no Namor. But this now leaves only Spider-Man with Sony, right? And why would Sony give up Spider-Man? I forgot what the number was out there. Like they paid like something like $6 million for it, and obviously every movie for Spider-Man, the last three have all been $1 billion. So they have made their return like quadruple infinite amount on Spider-Man. So there was no way that they're ever going to get Spider-Man back. But anyway, so Disney acquires Fox, and the big question is when is the Fox properties, the X-Men Fantastic Four, going to be officially introduced into the MCU? And it didn't make sense to me from a business standpoint that Sony will put Jean in their movie and not do a character they have the 100% film rights to, like someone like Spider-Gwen. So it just felt a little odd to me that Marvel would debut the mutants and Jean in a Sony-based film. That made zero sense to me. Then more rumors started popping up, seemingly out of nowhere. Someone just randomly said that Sadie Sink was playing Madeline Pryor. And, we here at Power of X-Men, we do our investigations. We'd like to dig deep on everything. And this rumor seems to be traced back to a Facebook post from CBC with no credited source or verification. Someone literally just went onto this Facebook message board and said, "Hey, Sadie Sink is Madeline Pryor," and the internet just screenshotted it. Similarly with Rachel Cole, similarly with Firestar. Now, the one that is a little interesting here is Rachel Summers. Where did that Rachel Summers rumor start? Well, Pubity, I say Pubity in my head, but Pubity, Pubity, however you say it, had a post and they cited Variety as a source. And they said that Sadie Sink was playing Rachel Summers. Now, of course, I saw this immediately. I screenshotted it because I must have been on the subway or on my way to do something. And I was like, I need to investigate this. No Variety article ever existed. And when I went back to Pubity's Instagram page, they had deleted the post. But that's it. That's all the internet needed, was to run with this and go, and say she was going to be Rachel Summers and it was going to tie into Secret Wars and everything. And I was like, okay, I will accept the fact that I'm wrong and that Sadie Sink is going to appear as Jean Grey in a Spider-Man movie because the Marvel universe isn't where it's at anymore. Right? Like the Marvel universe has had a lot of flops, post Endgame. But you're not going to tell me they're going to randomly introduce Rachel Summers without first formally introducing Jean and Cyclops to audiences, because Rachel, I love Rachel, but Rachel has no meaning as a standalone character if you don't have her family history to back it up, the emotional aspects of it for a movie. Of course, in a comic book, you can have a comic starring Rachel Summers because she has been around for decades at this point. However, it didn't make sense to me that in a movie without any context, you're just going to have Rachel Summers. Similarly with Madeline Pryor, right? You need Jean Grey for these other characters to exist, and then they can take off and be their own narrative. But, it would be a very bad sign to me if they had ever run with Rachel or Maddie. And I would have been like, damn, like they did not learn anything. And also, the level of secrecy for this kind of character, it has to be an A-list character. You can't just say Sadie Sink is playing Typhoid Mary, which also, by the way, never made sense. People claiming she was Typhoid Mary. It's like, one, Alice Eve is already Typhoid Mary in the MCU on the Netflix, and they've shown us that the Netflix shows are canon. So Alice Eve already did that role, and I'm sorry to say it flopped. The IP of Typhoid Mary flopped. I love Typhoid Mary. I remember Typhoid Summer, Typhoid Fever Summer, starring Jean, a couple years ago, back when she had just come back from the dead and was starring in X-Men Red. But there was no way that they were going to be this secretive over Typhoid Mary. And, come on. Like, the one thing that I will tell you that the speculation with Sadie's character, I was just like, some people don't have that business mentality, or they don't pick up on things, right? Or at least if you're able to advocate that you think she's Typhoid Mary, why do you think Marvel would restart a character that failed on a TV show and give it to an A-list actress? Listen, don't comment about Sadie being an A-list actress or not. She's a hot actress, and I don't mean physically hot. I mean, like, her clout is hot. She's one of those those actors out there that people are losing their minds over. She's a name. She draws people in. The Stranger Things fame. Like, you're not going to cast her as a D-list character. I'm sorry to call Typhoid Mary a D-list character, but you're not going to cast her as a D-list character. That's just it. She's going to be Jean Grey. She wasn't going to be Firestar. Wasn't going to be Firestar ever. If they were going to go the route of Firestar, then they would need to do Iceman as well. And that seemed like a bridge too far, especially since we saw that in Brand New Day, how judicious they were talking about the X-Men, the X gene, and where the source of Gene's power. All right. So that's sort of the background going into it. I do want to make an apology, a public apology to a source, a new source who messaged me back in like October, a photo of Sadie Sink with John Bernthal, Punisher. And it was a scene where she takes control of him at the Department of Damage Control, and her hair's up and she's got the bangs. And I replied to that person. So I got this months ago. You've seen it. The photo's out there. If you follow leaks and stuff like that, the photo was out there a couple months later. But I got it first. I mean, not like first, but I'm sure this person was sending it around. But I was among the first to get it. I didn't post it, obviously, because my reaction was, this is horrible Photoshop. And the person actually gave me a legit scoop. But here's the thing, Familia. It was a person who just randomly messaged me, no profile picture. And if you saw the version of the photo I got, which was very blurry, it looked Photoshop. And I had no way of properly vetting this person. And I'm sorry, unless I can vet someone, and this person, and I tried to vet them, I was like trying to get like some info on them, and they were like, oh, this is a friend of a friend's, image. I was like, well, okay, like that does not make a vetted source. We take vetting sources seriously here. That's something I always get angry about when I report on things and people kind of question it or they push back, like Onslaught in X-Men 97. Spoiler alert, no Onslaught. No Onslaught for X-Men 97. I'm not just making this up. This isn't just my gut feeling. I have a background in journalism. I was an English writing and journalism major. I was taught year one, freshman year, on how to vet sources. So, this person sends me this photo of Jean and Punisher. Essentially, it's right. However, I called it. I said that doesn't look real to me. This looks Photoshop, and that's it. And I never replied to that person again. So this person, who I do believe listens to the podcast, was well aware of who I was and how much I love our God Queen Jean Grey. I am sorry. I am sorry. But again, we live in the age of AI. I've got in trouble, Familia. I have gotten in trouble for unknowingly posting AI sometimes on it doesn't happen very frequent, but AI is no longer AI slop, right? It's so easy to look at something and be like, oh, this is AI slop. Ha ha ha. No, I mean, a lot of this is starting to look real. And so you got to be judicious about this. I'm not going to accept. My job now is to challenge everything that comes in, not only because people could just be lying, but also because it could be AI. And AI is only going to get worse and worse. Anyways, okay. So there is our background leading up to Sadie Sink being Jean Grey and sort of the status. We all didn't really know. Interesting enough, the marketing technique for Sadie Sink being Jean Grey is the same that we had during No Way Home, which was our Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield going to be in the movie, right? That was like the big speculation. It was huge. So they replicated that with Sadie Sink, and they needed to deliver. Again, they needed to deliver on the high speculation of Sadie Sink being Jean Grey. And it wasn't going to be Rachel Cole or Typhoid Mary or Firestar, But I didn't believe it was going to be Jean Grey. I thought it was going to be Spider-Gwen. I thought we were Ghost Spider-Woman, whatever her name is these days in the comics. I thought it was going to be Spider-Gwen. I thought, like, yeah, I mean, you go anywhere out there, you see that Spider-Man, his new amazing friends are Miles Morales and Spider-Gwen. Yeah, why wouldn't you do that? Sony, reap the rewards. I don't know what the deal was. I love the business aspect of things, not because I want to out any shady business dealings, or I want to find out how much money people are making. I'm just curious what the conversations were like. And I don't believe what's said to the media. I know the director said it was his idea to have Gina in the movie. I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. I believe that is a media point. I believe maybe he was given a list of characters he could potentially use, but I don't believe it was his idea, you know. And if it was, I'm going to tell you, Kevin Feige needs to get his house in order. Kevin Feige's letting these directors and showrunners come in and dictate what the MCU should be. The person who should be delineating orders should be Kevin Feige. And of course, for Spider-Man should be Amy Pascal, who I think Amy Pascal, my God, talk about a comeback story with her. Everything with the Sony emails and literally just hitting it out of the ballpark recently. I mean, she is Kathleen Kennedy. Take note of Amy Pascal. And by the way, you see Kevin Feige next to Amy Pascal in these Spider-Man Brand New Day interviews. Kevin Feige is like background character to Amy Pascal. I mean, truly, that she's cracking the whip with the Spider-Man production and IP. She gets it. She really does. Very, that is something to be studied if you work in Hollywood. But I'm always been curious about the business aspects of why would they allow Jean Grey, your A-list X-Man, to be debuted in Spider-Man Brand New Day when you already have Doomsday and Secret Wars coming? Why wouldn't you put her in Doomsday? As of this recording, she is not confirmed to be in Secret Wars. It is rumored, but as of this recording, she is not in Secret Wars, and up to our knowledge, she is not in Doomsday. Again, we did an interview with Chris Claremont at the beginning of the year, so about like 8 months ago, and he said that Famke was returning as Jean in Doomsday. Take that with whatever grain of salt you want, but that's what was told to us, and we reported on that. It's quite possible that Chris took a pass at the Doomsday script and Famke Jean was in it. That's very possible. So, it was odd to me that they would debut Jean in a Spider-Man movie. I was like, I don't know. And then the trailer came out and there were talks of mutation in it. I was like, okay, Spider-Man is mutating. We all assumed he was going to be Man Spider, of which was the leaks out there, right? So it's so funny. Like the leaks that people claim were real were fake leaks. But parts of it were real, like Sadie Sink being Jean Grey, right? But they were saying that like Hulk was going to turn into Grey Hulk and Jean will bring him back and Jean will bring Man Spider back to Peter Parker. It was a big mess, man. And like people were claiming to have seen a trailer. It's just, again, it's just all convoluted information out there. It's just don't trust the internet. Really, the leaks were essentially wrong, right? No one saw Sarah Gray coming. I didn't see any leaks about Sarah Gray. We'll get into Sarah Gray in a minute. But it felt odd that you would put Jean there. And I'm assuming Marvel has some kind of profit participation in this. And they're going to let Amy Pascal's production reap in the rewards of having Jean Grey. I mean, you've seen it's doing better than Endgame as of now. Let's see where it lands, right? But it's projected to at least make 2 billion, 2.5 billion, whatever. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money that Sony's going to get. And a big part of that success, I mean, yes, Tom Holland, Zendaya, Jacob, the actor who plays Ned, they're great. They are fantastic. Do not get me wrong. But part of why this movie is successful has been the marketing and who is Sadie Sink, who is a real villain here, right? The trailers didn't give us much. So I can't believe that Marvel allowed that to happen. Now, of course, Marvel is just not in the position anymore post Endgame, right? Post WandaVision, let's be real, post WandaVision, to be making demands they need the help here. Right? Rob Liefeld said it. Marvel, he compared it to a Brady Bunch episode where Marvel is basically Marsha Brady and Sony was like Marsha Brady's like quote unquote ugly friend that Marcia Brady dolls up, and then all of a sudden the ugly friend becomes better than Marcia Brady, and everyone loves the ugly friend. And Marcia Brady's like, huh? What just happened? Right? That's basically what happened with Sony and Marvel. Marvel beefed up Sony, right? I love Andrew Garfield, but Amazing Spider-Man 2 was not a good movie. Was truly not a good movie. I love Andrew Garfield. I love Emma Stone. I trust me. That's not the issue, but the script itself was just not good. Um, but they beefed up Spider-Man to the point that Spider-Man now is much better than than the MCU proper, than Marvel's MCU. Like, by the way, Sony, Morbius, Craven, Madame Web. Although I kind of like Madame Web, but I acknowledge Madame Web is not a good movie. I like it, but it's not a good movie. Um, this is stuff that Sony couldn't figure out on their own, and they needed Kevin Feige's help. So, give Kevin his flowers. So they threw literally they gave a touchdown to Sony with this. So I go in, I watched the movie. I had already gone in. A couple of sources hit me up, vetted sources hit me up and tell me that she was Jean. And usually when people tell me information, I try to see what all my sources are telling me and what are the common denominators. And again, a testament to my sources, and you know who you are, so thank you. When I get information from them, these particular sources, it's all consistent. All consistent. No one told me about Sarah Gray though. So I kind of already night of went in just being like, yeah, it's a done deal. I would be surprised if my sources are wrong and she is not Jean Grey. How about that? I would be like, damn, Sony did something nasty to everyone. So when when Spider-Man is searching her image and she comes up and he goes, Jean Elaine Grey. I was like, there she is. I love that they got her middle name right. I don't believe that we ever got Jean Elaine Grey, the full name, in the Fox movies. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I was happy to see her middle name there. And then they started talking about how she had a sister and that they noticed that Jean couldn't jump. What was it, like 30 feet? I'm forgetting, from body to body. And Jean was possessing MJ. And then she's captured by the Department of Damage Control. And she seizes the city, and Punisher's about to shoot her, and Spider-Man steps in, and Jean is able to share a memory of Aunt May, and Jean stays with Spider-Man mentally to make sure that he heals, and then she gets on a bus and goes to Westchester. Sort of like the gist of it. Now, I think Sadie Sink, when I saw her in season 4 of Stranger Things, and they did the Kate Bush running up that hill sequence, I thought, this girl can act. This girl is comfortable in a green screen, in an action sequence. She sold me. She sold me. She's a great actress. Anything I'm saying about Sadie Sink, does not go towards their choice, which I believe she said she didn't have to audition. It was offered to her, and they're like, just the last redhead. Apparently, redheads are going to extinct. My niece is a redhead, so this is why I know so much about redheads, apparently. But apparently, the redheads are going extinct out there. Natural redheads. My best friend also growing up is a redhead. I've always had redheads surrounded by me. But my best friend is now, we're in our 40s, so we dye our hair. But she was offered the role of Jean, and I don't blame Marvel, Amy Pascal, whoever casted her, for offering it to her. Apart from just having red hair, she has, the light eyes, which, I believe Sadie Sink's eyes are a bluish. Jean is supposed to have green eyes. It's fine. It's not it. Let's Google it right now. This is going to drive me crazy. One of the things that I can't do on a podcast recording, those of you who've listened for a long time, is if I get something wrong or if I'm unsure of an information, I can't continue on talking. And so I noticed a dip in quality discussing. Sadie Sink has blue eyes. Gene has green eyes, but I'm like, whatever. Famke wasn't a natural redhead. Famke didn't have light eyes. It's fine. This is just nitpicking because we can't nitpick. Again, Sadie Sink was perfect. Perfect casting. Talented, looks like Gene, a young version of Gene. You sign her up for 10, 20 years. You got Jean Grey. You don't have to worry about Jean Grey for the next 2 decades. I get it. My issue is the script with Jean. And I know I've seen a lot of people out there going back and forth in the comments. I sometimes stalk comments. I don't read them as much anymore, but I've seen people talk about it in comments on YouTube videos. Everyone has an opinion of Jean Grey in this movie. Either you really love it or you really hate it, is sort of what I've seen. It's very polarizing, right? Anywhere from Grace Randolph to From the Ashes to random angry YouTubers that just pop up on my suggestion, feed on my page for YouTube. I've read it all. I've read it. I've listened to it. I've watched it all. I'm in the middle, to be honest with you. Again, Sadie Sink, great actress, looks the part of G. For me, it was an issue of writing. Let's get the big one out of the way because the other ones I'm a little irrational and neurotic about. But I think the greatest flaw was Jean hurting people in this movie. And I'm going to specifically hone in on the older gentleman. She had walk in front of a taxi in traffic, seemingly killing him, and we'll get into that, and MJ. So with the older man, did she kill? I read it. I read it. I watched it as she killed him. This is an older individual who went into traffic and got hit pretty hard. So let's just say he's not dead. I have had friends who have gotten hit by taxis here in New York City. You don't walk away. You're not okay following that. So, and my friends, it wasn't even a fast taxi. And they've had years of surgeries, of plates put in them, metal bars, of physical rehab. More than one friend. It's a very common occurrence here. I've almost gotten hit by a couple taxi cabs. In fact, one time, a couple years ago, I was on the phone with Latvian lad, Sean, and I was crossing in Chelsea Market, and literally a car, it wasn't a taxi, but a car literally stopped like a centimeter away from my knee, and they were speeding down, and I had the right of way. I got so angry, I screamed. Sean knows me, so he's not surprised by that. But yeah, you don't walk away from that. And that poor man, like either he's dead or he has a life of like really bad rehab, and Gene showed no remorse for it. I similarly have an issue with Noah Neymar in Black Panther 2 killing Angela Bassett, killing the Queen of Wakanda, Black Panther's mother. Noah Neymar kills her. I'm like, how can I ever forgive you for this as an audience member? I just feel that like it shows that the writer and director don't know how to do a morally gray, morally gray character, right? You can argue that Jean's irrational in that moment. She wants her sister. Sure, great. She puts this poor old man in harm's way. Best case scenario, he's not dead. He's just has to have a lot of surgery. Okay. All right. If you had a beat at the end where Jean was like, I caused so much pain. What do I do to make this up? Then you start showing that morally gray area with the character. The character knows she did wrong, and she wants to atone for that. I'm okay with that. I truly am. But the fact that Jean does not show any remorse for what she did, the Department of Damage Control, well, I keep saying the Department of Justice, Department of Damage Control Really? Like she took them all down. I mean, I don't see how they're alive, but that's fine. I'll accept MCU magic. Jean needs to just be like, hey, I did a lot of bad. It's time just for me to start doing some good. I'm so sorry to these people whose lives I've ruined, right? Especially since Spider-Man's such a wholesome character, you know? You can argue it was a Dark Phoenix persona. I've seen people say it's Dark Phoenix. Please don't do the Dark Phoenix multiple personality DID situation. It was cheesy in the Fox X in X3. An actress like Famke boiling down the Phoenix to a suppressed personality. It's a cosmic being, and Jean is a Phoenix, and Phoenix is a Jean. It's a very complicated philosophical situation with Jean and the Phoenix. It's not something as explained away by psychological condition that's earthbound. It has to be cosmic. The Phoenix has to be cosmic. Fine, maybe it's already tapping into her. No evidence of it other than Jean was significantly powered up. People say, well, Jean killed in the Dark Phoenix saga. Yeah, and that was the entire point of the saga is that she killed an entire star system of broccoli people, and that was wrong. And the Shi'ar put her on trial by combat that ended with her saying she couldn't bear the thought of taking another life, and she had to unalive herself on the moon. It served a larger purpose in the story. Here, Gina's just like, la la la. I think I'll go to Westchester at the end. So I didn't like that. If you're okay with Jean Grey killing like that, well, it's just a difference of philosophy of what we think a hero should be. I think Jean should have shown remorse. And again, I think it could have been as easy as Spider-Man being like, thankfully you didn't kill all those people. They're hurt. And Jean being like, I'm so sorry. I need to atone for that. That's all it had to be, you know. Again, with Noah Mord, I mean, I don't know how am I supposed to root for him and Sue. Um, it just, I don't know. It really makes me upset and sad that that was the route they went because Jean is a character built on compassion and empathy. And that's fine. This is the beginnings of her, right? She's teen Jean. Another thing. Oh my God. All of a sudden, everyone's read Bendis's all new X-Men and all new Uncanny X-Men. Everyone's all of a sudden is a fan. When I remember, and this is pre-Power of X-Men, but I remember going in like the CBR message boards and everyone calling it garbage and no one reading it. Shades of Grey, Jean Grey message board, no one liked it, but now all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, it's true to the source material. It's like, no, I don't know. It was a little bit more complicated in the comics. I mean, it's time displaced X-Men. She has the banks. She has the banks. Of that, we are certain she has the banks. So, Teen Jean, Sadie Sink, it didn't land for me. You want to blame it on Dark Phoenix persona? Great, fine. We'll have to see where her story plays out. As of right now, there's no evidence that Phoenix was present. It's just Jean being incredibly powerful, which, by the way, for those of who cite the Bendis's all new X-Men, yeah, you're right. Jean was powerful on her own. It's a big point that's made a lot, especially in recent comics, that Jean by herself has powers that could rival that of the Phoenix. To whatever degree depends on the writer. All right. So the next point I want to make is MJ. So, she jumps into MJ's mind. She convinces Spider-Man that she's really MJ and, plays with Spider-Man's emotions and has them kiss. And, the beat later down the line is like, hey, I just want you to know, Spider-Man says this to MJ, that Jean went into your mind and, had you kiss me and I kissed back. And I just want you to know about that. And then when Jean is at Department of Damage Control and her powers unleashed on the city, she gets a hold of MJ. Now, I can't think of a worse crime than forcing another human being to do something against their will. MJ having to kiss Spider-Man and not be her is kind of shady of Jean. Very shady. I get what the story's trying to elucidate. It's trying to misdirect the audience because we're like, oh my God, MJ remembers Peter, and it's not. It's just Jean. It's a pretty shitty thing, but MJ later on says, that it was horrible being possessed by Jean. And when Jean does that wave and she's holding the city, and I know it's not the entire city, it's just an area of the city, but still it's Manhattan, a couple of blocks, millions of people already. You see MJ cry. And for that, I'm like, oh my God, Jean is violating MJ again. And MJ is so terrified. She's crying. And I just thought, how do you forgive someone who's doing that to MJ? One of the main characters of the Spider-Man franchise, the character that we are rooting, that Spider-Man and her figure it out and end up together. And she has a tear. Props to Zendaya's acting. Props. Chef's kiss. Such a talented actress. Because she saw, I mean, that's part of the reason. If she had just stood there looking dazed, I would have just been like, oh yeah, there's Jean taking a hold of Ned and MJ. But the fact that MJ looked so distraught and had a tear coming down her eye. I mean, man, think about things in your life that have happened to you that have been so atrocious that you were powerless against. And now imagine it happening again. It's paralyzing. Oh, so, I can't forgive Jane's sins for that. I want to. I'm a Jean Grey. Our God Queen did that. And again, it could have been solved by Jean having a beat with MJ and saying, I'm so sorry I did that to you. I was just so angry over my sister. I was acting irrationally. That's it. That's all you had to do. You just have to have Jean apologize for by the way, in real life, that's not how it works, to be very clear. But for a movie, for a made up universe, for a script, you just have the characters apologize for their actions and say they were motivated by something else, or Jean saying, like, the power in me, I don't know how to control this. Which is something we saw with Teen Jean, by the way. I don't know how to control. I'm a psychic all of a sudden. I'm a really powerful psychic, and I've been yanked from my own time. And I'm using my powers to get a heads up on the situation. Fine. There was really no point for her to possess MJ. It's not like she needed desperate information about Sarah from Spider-Man. She was just toying with Spider-Man. Maybe we'll rewatch the movie together as a familia, and you guys can talk to me about it. And we can talk about beats of why this doesn't bother so many people. The other thing I did not like was that Sarah Gray is a telepath. I'm like, hey, telepath twins. I know they're not twins. They're sisters. Telepath sisters. They're close enough in age. They might as well be twins. I think it cheapens Jean's storyline and origin. I think Jean's story that her best friend, ironically, gets hit by a car and that activates her powers, and she has to hold on to her friend as her friend dies, and it's so traumatic for Jean that she can't control her powers, or her powers unleash, however you want to interpret the story. And that's where Xavier comes in to help her control it. I love it. I think that's perfect origin story. When I was years ago, like at this point, 12 years ago, when I was reading reviews on Sailor Moon Crystal, someone wrote about how Usagi, Sailor Moon's origin, is pretty damn near perfect, just like Spider-Man, with Uncle Ben. It's just a perfect origin story. Why tinker with something? And I would say the same about Jean. Why tinker with this? You could have had, it was Annie, maybe too coincidental that her best friend also was a telepath, but you could have had Jean with Annie and the Department of Damage Control. I'm playing Monday morning quarterback, so forgive me. But Department of Damage Control ran over Annie trying to get Jean, and Jean now wants revenge against Damage Control. You would have done the same exact thing, right? Sarah Gray, think about let's put these characters aside and just look at the script. Sarah Gray has no purpose in this movie other than to get Jean to want to attack damage control. It could be any reason Jean wants an assault on damage control, right? Sarah Gray, we don't even see her die. That is so weird to me that a character that was as important to Jean as Sarah Gray was, that they don't even show her die. And then what was that? That Max, the V Max thing, and it just ended up being what Sarah Gray looked at before she died. It was ridiculous. What show me Sarah Gray die? Get me as an audience member angry so I can feel Jean's pain. Because we don't see it. And like really, that's it? Like the HVAC unit was that's it? I don't know. Just not into it. And some plot holes, like so they want to replicate the telepathy, which I get it. That was established in the script. But they want to establish that Department of Damage Control wants to make use of the things, the powers they come across. So telepathy obviously being one of them. Okay. Um, why didn't they identify the X gene? Oh, because Sony probably can't do that because they are allowed to use gene, but if you notice, they're not allowed to say gifted because they called her special. They're not allowed to talk about the X gene because if you are the US government and you are studying Sarah Gray for months and trying to figure out how to replicate her power, you're like, well, where's her power coming from? Is a logical question. How does she come across these powers? Her sister has these powers too. Is it something in the family genome? Huh, she has an X gene. What is this mutation she has? And by the way, the idea of mutations never applied to Sadie. It's applied to Peter, but not Sadie. Why didn't they apply it? They were talking about mutations in this very movie. I don't get it. And by the way, a very compelling argument from Mark Ruffalo, Bruce Banner, saying that who are we to say what genes should or should not be expressed? Wow, that's a great setup for mutants in the Marvel universe, especially with the political turmoil that's inevitably going to happen. So they're studying Sarah Gray for months and they don't conclude it's a result of a mutation. Yet over in Miss Marvel, the TV show, Bruno, was that the name of the character? Just 1 week, a high school student in Jersey City is able to identify the X gene within Kamala Khan. What? And again, you want to make the argument that Bruno is just that smart? Great, okay. But he doesn't have the technology that the US government has. And fine, the US government may not be able to figure it out in a weekend, but they have months and they're studying the subject front and center for months. It just made everyone look stupid. Obviously, the head of damage control is a character from the comics. I thought he was going to be revealed to be Sinister. I thought that was going to be like the little wink wink. He just wanted Jean's genes, because obviously for the longest time, Mr. Sinister was obsessed with Jean Grey and Scott Summers. Obviously, we now have mutant collars that will be introduced later down the line because Spider-Man, with a wave of techno wizardry, is able to suppress Jean's powers like a blanket inhibitor, right? I don't know why, because it was such a big deal for Spider-Man. They had to target a specific RNA strand for him. But with Jean, it's just a blanket one. No one ever thought like, I mean, maybe she has a mutation situation here. The US government also, months and months, couldn't figure out a way to suppress Sarah Gray's powers. I guess the idea was Sarah Gray couldn't jump more than 30 feet, so they kept their distance. So that's why they were able to hold her. Sure. Jean is a special one. Jean's the one with all the power. So they weren't anticipating that. Okay, sure. I'll play along, but the movie doesn't try to present these as intelligent points. So I'm sorry. I know. I give a lot of feedback. I'm very critical. Obviously, I'm excited that Gina Lynn Gray, is in the MCU officially. And not only is she in the MCU, but it's a record-breaking box office opening. Could be a rival to Endgame. Could go on to be the most highest gross movie ever, and it stars Jean Grey. You know, James Cameron's like, I got to re-release Titanic again. You guys remember that? James Cameron re-released Titanic after Endgame just so he can have the #1 spot again. That's the highest grossing film of all time, adjusted for inflation, of course. So I'm happy to see that with Jean. I want Jean Grey to be front and center. I love Sam Weavering, the girl from Ready or Not. I love Kit Connor as Cyclops, Sam as Emma Frost, Kit Connor as Cyclops. I'm happy. I think that's interesting. I don't think they're going to do the love triangle. I mean, Kit Connor's like 22. Samantha Weaver, whatever her name is, Emma is going to be obviously in her mid-30s. I would suggest them not to do that threesome situation, that love triangle situation. Cast a younger Wolverine, bring in Psylocke. It was a quantum persona that was hitting on Cyclops. So, do that with the younger cast. Give us that teen drama, but don't make Emma Frost, someone who's hitting on her students. Please do not. But I still think that Emma can come in and smack Jean down, being like, what are you doing? You're a telepath. There's a code of conduct here that even I, Emma Grace Frost, observe. So I think the future looks bright for the X-Men in the MCU. This is a huge win for the MCU. Sadie Sink, I mean, again, it's our echo chamber. We X-Men fans are having the discourse of we love it, we hate it. In my case, I think it's a little gray, it's a little nuanced. But, let's call them the normies, the general fandom, the people who help make movies $8 billion because they're just everyday people who know Spider-Man, who hear it's a good movie, who want to have a party at the cinema and watch Spider-Man. My little cousin, I say little, he's in his 20s. He went to go watch Spider-Man twice. He's not even like a big, comic book fan. My other cousin, one I grew up with, he's obsessed with comics just like me. He's kind of taken a break from the Marvel universe, both comics, animated shows, and movies, and he went to go see Spider-Man. They all just loved it. So it's only, as always, it's always an echo chamber of fandom where we're having this kind of discourse. So I'm happy. I know I just went off about things, but I'm happy that Jean is getting well received, and I want her at a Disney park. I want to go into Target. I want to get a Jean Grey shirt. Hasbro was releasing Marvel Legends of the villains in this movie, and it's our comic book counterparts with the Spider-Man Brand New Day packaging. I want a Jean Grey in her 90s costume with Brand New Day packaging. Give it to me. I want it now. Give us an updated 90s Jean. So those are my thoughts, Familia. You tell me. Well, you've already told me. It's been 2 weeks. You can DM me at Power of X-Men. You can leave a comment if you're watching this, hearing this on YouTube. Whatever you want. You tell me. I turn this over to the Familia, to our community here. At the end of the day, I want the X-Men to survive to the next generation. And I think this has done it. I think people, like if we grew up watching the animated series and comic books had a much bigger presence, people are going to grow up watching the MCU, and this is how they're going to learn of these characters. This is how they're going to learn of Jean. 20 years from now, someone who's 5 years old now, 20 years from now is going to talk about their nostalgia of seeing Jean in the Spider-Man movie, and that's where they're going to know Jean. Just like how we talk about Catherine Disher in X-Men the Animated Series. It saddens me though, because I've said this before. My love for these characters is not the animated series, it's not the movies, it's the comic books. And I don't think anyone's reading the comic books now. I mean, yes, within our fandom, within our echo chamber, people are reading, but those people who should be popping into a comic book store and picking up an issue and they're not comic book, it's not there. And we know Marvel has a lot of editorial changes happening with their move to Burbank. Let's see where everything lands. Anyways, Familia, hit me up at Power of X-Men. Let me know your feels. Are you excited? We will talk to you later.